Hello, welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Robert Schlide, Chief of Police for Shelby Township. With me today is Detective Lieutenant Jason Schmittler from our Detective Bureau. Jason's in charge of our Detective Bureau, and we're going to talk about an incident that happened on August 14th at 5:55 a.m. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Chief.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And can you walk us through the morning of August 14th at Whispering Woods apartment complex and tell us what happened on that morning?
Absolutely. Whispering Lakes is located off of West Utica Road by DeQuender. On that morning, it was prior to 6 a.m. The female resident went out to her back deck. She then went back inside. When she went back inside the house, she shut the screen door and locked it, but she did not shut the glass door. She then went in to take a shower to get ready for work. A short time later, she saw a shadow in the bathroom. She was home alone. And when she opened the curtain, the male was standing right in front of her. This subject entered the back door, came in from the door wall, and scared her, obviously. She was frightened. She did the right thing. She screamed. She started throwing things at the ceiling to wake up the neighbor above, and thank God he did call the police. The suspect did flee the scene, and as soon as he left, obviously she locked herself in the bathroom. And once the officers arrived, they saw footprints that were in the grass, and we called the canine to the scene. The canine led us to another area of the same apartment complex, and that was crucial. It provided us with many leads. We started interviewing people as they were leaving for work. We obtained some information, then we had a short list of suspects. When the detectives arrived on the scene, we ultimately initiated interviews. From that point, there was a footprint left outside the place, and I provided a picture for you. We casted it.
Oh, hang on a second. You're talking about a footprint, correct?
A footprint
Okay.
from a boot. And ultimately, we found that boot, and when we found our suspect.
Okay.
Within hours, he was in custody, and the community was safe.
Okay. Obviously, it's a very scary situation. And what could have been done to prevent something like this happening?
Lock your doors.
Okay.
Be aware of your surroundings. Shelby Township is very safe, but we still want people to be aware. If she just shut her glass door and locked it, things would have been different.
Yes. Very, very important for people.
And those were her words after the fact.
Yes.
The suspect was arraigned for home invasion 1, which is a serious felony, and he's currently at the Macomb County Jail on a $125,000 bond.
Okay. What kind of criminal record did he have?
Minor drug convictions.
Okay. And how close in proximity did he live to the victim?
The incident happened in the rear of the complex. He lived right off the first street, so we're talking a few hundred yards.
Okay. So is there, do we suspect that he was casing the location, watching her potentially, seeing her comings and goings?
Yes. Although there was some evidence later on when we interviewed the suspect that he wasn't sure who exactly lived there, I believe otherwise. She had seen him in the complex before and behind her residence.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that he is in custody. He had a large cash bond placed on him, so he's no threat to the community at this point. But the reality of it is we now have over 78,000 people living in Shelby Township, and this is, frankly, we're not in Mayberry anymore. People need to lock their doors, be aware of their surroundings, be aware of their neighbors at all times. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's not just the fact of, I realize you should be able to go out of your house and walk back in and take a shower. But think about it. We do get home invasions, and we make it easy for the criminals sometimes. We'll leave our garage doors open. We won't lock our doors. We have alarms on the houses that we just don't use because they're a pain. We need to be a little bit smarter, make it more difficult. Just by leaving a couple lights on, making it look like somebody's home, they'll go somewhere else.
Now, did this woman live alone?
This woman was home alone, yes.
Okay. Well, did she live alone?
She did live alone.
Okay, so she lived alone. So there's probably a good possibility that he was casing the location, staking her out. And so not only if you live alone, anyone who lives in this township should keep your doors locked, garage doors locked, etc. What else can you tell us about that specific area, that location, that apartment complex? Is relatively safe, correct? We don't have a lot of complaints coming out of there?
It is safe. We don't take a tremendous amount of reports from that area. This was just something that happened that morning. Talking with the suspect, he saw his opportunity and he took it. And sometimes we make it easy that way. You figure if somebody lives in the subdivision and they leave their barbecue out or their bikes laying out, that those are crimes of opportunity. You're tempting somebody else to take your belongings.
Okay. When I came into work on that morning on August 14th, I arrived around 8 a.m. There was no one in the police station other than a couple of the secretaries. Obviously, I inquired what was happening, and at that point, Lieutenant Schmittler was heading up an intense manhunt for the person who broke into this woman's home and entered into her bathroom. Lieutenant Schmittler did a fantastic job tracking this individual down. It took you pretty much an entire day to actually get him identified, correct? You had suspicions in the morning, I think, if you remember. And
by 9:30, we had confirmation who our suspect was.
Okay.
We did pursue that, and we did initiate and gather other evidence such as clothing, laptop, phone, the boots.
Okay.
When we look at the entire incident, I credit our evidence techs, our responding patrol. Our incident, for us to be able to close a case, it all depends on the officers, the first ones on the scene, to preserve it. We were able to get that footprint, that boot print. That's amazing. The dog tracking to the area of the suspect's house, and that's just good police work.
Where did you actually find him at and take him into custody at?
We interviewed him at home briefly, and then we made arrangements for him to turn himself in with us later on that morning. So he did come to us from Flint.
Okay, so he basically left that morning and went up to Flint, correct?
He left with a family member, correct.
And he made contact with his mother and persuaded her to bring him back here
Yes,
to the Township.
she was very cooperative.
Okay, very good. Outstanding work. I want to compliment you and your staff for doing such a great job.
Thank you, Chief.
There's something else I'd like to talk to you about. Now, we've had a rash of vehicles being broken into, correct? And some of the things that people are leaving in their cars might scare the community members. They're leaving guns, loaded guns in their cars, not locking the cars. Whether they're locking them or unlocking them, a loaded gun is no spot. I'm sorry, car is no location for a loaded gun. Can you talk about this a little bit?
We've had two just reported this week where there was guns left in unlocked vehicles. There's no need to say it's dangerous. Everybody knows it is. It's irresponsible. If they're CPL holders, we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to take them in front of the gun board and make them explain their actions. There's no reason to leave a firearm in the car.
Okay.
We made 2 arrests within the last 10 days. Back on the 23rd of August, we arrested a male and female, both 26 and 23, who were car hopping in our town. Neither one of them were residents. Car hopping is just going vehicle to vehicle, the cars that are unlocked, and just going through the contents and stealing them. They're taking everything from your cell phone cords to mini computers, the tablets, cell phones, and change.
You know, just inadvertently when I get out of a car in a parking lot, every once in a while you happen to look at the car next to you or inside of it, I see all kinds of crazy things. iPads, cameras, cell phones, etc. You cannot leave these things in cars. That's the bottom line. And if you do not want to be a victim and have your iPad stolen, you need to lock your car doors at all times. And are most of these car doors open when they're doing the car hopping, or a majority of them?
All of them, in this case of this arrest, they were all open, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of those. We're not having the windows smashed out anymore or the locks being punched. We're just having them simply go car to car during the night. This was about 6 in the morning when officers were called out there. A resident happened to look out, saw somebody in his car, and called the police. The officers responded within a minute. Once they were on scene, they quickly located the 2 people. They started recovering some of the evidence. We later located the vehicle, which we initiated a search warrant from the Detective Bureau, and we found additional stolen property. So we've linked it to 3 different cases so far. And, you know, they were not township residents. They had no business being in that subdivision.
Where did the person did you arrest? Where do they live at?
One lived in Mount Clemens. The second one was from Clinton Township.
Okay, and what fuels most of this behavior by these suspects, in your experience? Drugs. Heroin, marijuana, cocaine.
Heroin, prescription meds, those are the 2 biggest. Marijuana is still a big drug out there.
Jason, what are we doing as far as enforcement with heroin and targeting heroin? We have young people dying around the country, in our township, in our community. What are we doing specifically right now as far as targeting heroin?
We have an officer assigned to the DEA unit. It's called a TFO, Task Force Officer. They are strictly going after the pushers of the heroin. They take it right from the city. They take it from outside the country. They follow it wherever it goes. So we have a first-hand person that's in there, and they'll bring their resources back to our department. It's a great tool to have.
Okay. How long have we had this tool in place?
Just a few months.
Okay.
It was something that you started back in the spring, and I pushed for, and I think it's something very great.
Okay. And then what are we doing internally as far as your own immediate staff as far as the heroin enforcement?
We have detectives assigned to the afternoons and day shift, being myself. We will go after any amount. I don't care if it's one package of heroin or if it's a kilo. Whatever that amount, if it's inside our borders, we'll go after them.
I mean, this heroin is scary and stuff. It's ruining lives.
We've had arrests within the last week, a significant amount. We've had arrests 2 months ago that was huge also. We're seeing the quantities now here, which is we haven't seen before. And yes, people are dying from the heroin. It's getting mixed with the fentanyl, and it's just being abused. There's nobody to monitor it. There's no quality control.
What can parents do with their high schoolers and their kids in their early 20s? They're living at home as far as monitoring this type. What should they be looking for?
Be aware. Go through their rooms. See what's there. Look at their demeanor. Change of moods. This drug does get a hold of you, and unfortunately, it doesn't let go. And although you may stop the drug for a time, it's always on your shoulder, and people go back to it for the littlest things.
Obviously, track marks is one of the things to look for. What about weight loss?
Weight loss definitely is an indicator, the track marks, but you got to realize something. You can inhale it too, and just by the small straws, crushing up the pill, there's many different ways that you can abuse this drug, and you're not always going to see those needle marks because when you start it, you usually hit the large muscles. You'll shoot it in your butt or some of the bigger muscles, and eventually you'll have to focus in on the vein because you never get as high as the last one, and that's what they're chasing.
Okay.
It does have a hold on you. It's horrible.
Drug education starts in the home. Parents need to monitor their children, talk about it constantly, and be aware of the children's friends, who they're associating with, and who the families are. Jason, thank you very much for being the first guest on our program here.
I look forward to having you.
I look forward to having you in the future. Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And now, folks, next we'll have Jim Santilli. He's the Executive Director of the Traffic Improvement Association of Michigan. Welcome back to Straight Talk. My guest for this segment is Jim Santilli. Jim is the Executive Director of the Traffic Improvement Association of Michigan. Jim, welcome today.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you for coming on the show today. I want to talk to you a little bit. Well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your organization that you're part of, that you head up?
Sure. The Traffic Improvement Association of Michigan was actually formed back in 1967. And just to give you a little history, at that time, Oakland County had one of the highest traffic fatality rates in the nation. And the chancellor of Oakland University, which was Michigan State University at the time, basically formed a committee of more than 200 business leaders and public officials. And they formed different exploratory committees and came up with a list of 92 recommendations as far as how they can improve traffic safety in Oakland County. And once the recommendations were complete, they said, well, we need an agency to oversee this. And they didn't want it to be an official government agency just because sometimes, you can have political differences. So they formed us as an independent agency. And at that time, it was Oakland County specific. Now we cover the entire state of Michigan. We focus on the 4 E's, traffic safety, engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency medical services. So I report to a board of 26 board members consisting of public officials, business leaders, and a wide variety of public safety professionals. In fact, Commissioner Jim Carabelli, who represents Shelby Township on the Macomb County Board of Commissioners, he's one of those directors. And then we have our Board of Trustees consisting of the Secretary of State, State Police Director, Michigan Department of Transportation Director, and a wide variety of other public officials.
You're a busy man.
Yes.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many law enforcement agencies you're strategically partnered with?
Not off the top of my head, but every day we're partnering with a different agency. So.
Okay, and obviously we recently partnered.
Yeah.
And in the course of my tenure as chief here, now 8 months, the overwhelming majority problem of complaints that we get is traffic-related problems. We have traffic-related problems in the subdivisions, chronic, constant complaints about problems in subdivisions and then also on some of our main roads. And I called you in to help us out with a couple of those problems. So for the first problem we had, the big problem was on Whitby Way between 24 and 25 Mile Road. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did in there for us and what the end result was?
Yeah, so in that situation, again, we provide a lot of different services, so this pertains to engineering. What we did, we originally met with you and the deputy chief. You've advised us of numerous citizen complaints out there, so we went out there and basically set up several traffic counters on that street between 24 and 25 Mile Road, collected the speeds of vehicular traffic for a period of 1 week, and then our traffic engineer, he analyzed that data as well as looked at a wide variety of other factors, the width of the roadway, traffic crash history, pedestrian traffic, sight distance, and then from that he wrote up a report basically identifying the problem and analyzing the data. And what we did determine in that situation that traffic speeds were higher than the norm for that type of residential street. So we did, obviously, we forwarded the report to you, and our conclusion was increasing traffic enforcement, which your agency, from what I understand, has done.
Now, one of the things you told me that you helped me with this number, you said that 85 percentile were traveling at or near speeds of 33 miles an hour. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean that 85 out of the 100 cars going by were going at least 33 miles an hour? How does that exactly work?
So what that means is basically when we talk about 85th percentile speeds, and I'll get into that as far as how it applies to setting speed limits, that means that 85% of the drivers were traveling at that speed limit or below.
Okay. So that's pretty high for a residential
Yes.
area. So we knew we had a problem on our hands.
Yes,
And
definitely.
what we did is we turned our traffic enforcement units loose on that location. So we were up there for about a month. We were in there in the morning from 7 in the morning to 9 a.m. and then in the afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. Okay, for about a month. And we wrote over 150 tickets in that time period. Ironically, over half the tickets that were issued were to residents of that specific community, which disappointed me that they would be racing up and down their own block. Nothing is more important than the life of a child, and obviously we know that we have problems with children getting hit in our country in subdivisions because people racing up and down. So
Exactly. And that's what it all comes back to. It's all about public safety. It's, when we go out there and conduct traffic enforcement, it's part of an education process. And, again, using the 3 E's, so you look at engineering, you try to design the roadway in the safest method possible, address all the different issues, pavement markings, signage, and whatnot. You do public education, trying to educate the public, and remind them to travel safely with whatever situation you're dealing with. And then, the last option is generally enforcement. And, again, that's part of the education process. Handing out the ticket, it's not, to collect revenue or, specifically punish somebody. It's to, again, try to change that driver behavior so we can save lives and prevent injuries on our roadway.
now we pulled out of there about 3 to 4 weeks ago and I have not had one complaint. What are you going to do for us in a few months to verify that we actually are what we've done is working up there?
Well, again, we'll conduct the same type of study. We'll place the traffic counters out there for a period of 1 week, collect all the speeds of the vehicles traveling through, and just do a comparative analysis and see what effect the enforcement had. Now, if the enforcement wasn't effective, that's where we could maybe work with the Macomb County Department of Roads and discuss some possible engineering countermeasures.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate everything you've done for us up there. Now, another location that we're having a lot of complaints on is Jewel Road in the area of 24, 25 Mile Road. And you did a study up there for us too,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in that situation, we took the same approach. We went out there, we placed traffic counters out, we collected the speeds of the vehicles traveling through there. We looked at the traffic crash history, took measurements, regarding the width of the roadway, and looked at sight distance as well, pulling out of drives. And again, our traffic engineer, he went through, analyzed the data, wrote a report, sent it to you. In that situation, the speed limit is set accordingly. I know there were concerns about the speed limit being too high for that section, but this is kind of where we get into the Michigan speed law. And in the state of Michigan, back in 2006, there was a revision to the speed law. Part of that removed the residential district definition in the speed law. But what we do here in Michigan, and this is something that's pushed by the federal government as well, is when we look at speed limits, a lot of times when you go into different jurisdictions or municipalities, speed limits are set artificially low. And what studies, numerous studies show, and again, those were studies, looked at by the federal government, states, as well as the private sector. And if you set a speed limit artificially low, what happens is you get so many different variations of speed. So you got, let's say, a speed limit set at 35, but what's safe and reasonable is 45. You would have, some drivers doing the 35 trying to comply with the posted speed limit. You would have other drivers saying, well, I'll do maybe 5 over. Then you have other drivers doing, let's say, 45 miles per hour because they feel that's what's safe and reasonable. And so that causes so many variations of traffic speeds, and that's why you get increased tailgating, people passing, attempting to pass, and what happens now, it becomes a safety issue because it generally increases crashes. So that's why we always look at, when we're setting speed limits, we look at a number of different factors. So we take into account the 85th percentile speed. So we'll go out there and again, we'll do tube counts, or we can use LiDAR, which is laser, to track different vehicles. And we do that during free-flowing traffic. And so once we have that speed data, we'll look at what the 85th percentile speed is. We also look at number of access points, so how many driveways there are in that roadway, because that's taken into account. We look at the traffic crash history and see, if there were any speed-related crashes previously. We look at roadway geometrics. Is there a curve in the road? The width of the roadway. So again, an abundance of different factors are taken into account in these situations when setting speed limits. And again, it all goes back to safety. And we want speed limits set appropriately. And sometimes we get asked by municipalities, well, why can't I just put up what speed limit I want? And the reason there is a state law is because we want consistency. We don't want, somebody to be driving through at Shelby Township on, the same road, and maybe they have it posted artificially low at 25, and then you enter a different jurisdiction and maybe it's 45 or 50 miles per hour there. So the goal is to keep traffic control uniform throughout the state as well as the nation, and that's where the manual uniform traffic control devices comes in. And what that is, here in Michigan we call it the Michigan Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So that's a federal manual, but the states adopt it. And so in Michigan we just basically modified it, adding in different sections of the vehicle code. And that specifies pretty much anything related to traffic control devices. So sometimes people think, well, I can put a stop sign wherever I want, but that's not the case. You actually have to do traffic volume approach counts in many situations, look at different factors, sight distance, crash history. So there's a number of warrants that you have to meet to actually install a stop sign or a traffic signal. So this manual covers anything with traffic control devices. And again, it's all about consistency. We don't want people being in Michigan and having one type of stop sign, and then you drive down to Ohio and there's a different type. So again, we want uniformity throughout the state and the nation, just so everybody's aware of these devices, and it keeps people safe.
Okay. A tremendous amount of energy and brain power goes into determining these speeds, correct? This is not some fly-by-night
And that's the thing, it's a science. It's not,
yes.
And that's why we try to keep politics out of it. Now, there are a number of communities out there that do have lower speed limits. That's something we try to work with them on. Sometimes we get councils where they reduce the speed limit, after a speed study was done. In that situation, now they're posting an illegal speed limit. And with Jewel, I know some of the residents were saying, well, why can't we lower the speed limit? But in that case, what I told them at the meeting that was held here in Shelby Township, if the Macomb County Department of Roads were to post that speed limit lower than that 85th percentile speed, as the residents wanted, the speed limit is now not legal. And so the TCO, the traffic control order on file, would not be legal. So in that situation, if officers were enforcing it, those could be challenged in court.
Okay. Jim, I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been fantastic information for our residents. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm Robert Schlide. We'll see you next time on Straight Talk.